Welcome back to today's podcast. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it as always. All right, you guys, I'm here with a client and a guest because that's what you love. And Heidi was so generous to say that she would share some information with you. So I want to welcome Heidi Terrell. Her and her husband, Brock, are clients, and they have been clients for a couple of years now, and they live in Nebraska. So we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff today. And they're in Nebraska where it is drier than a bone down there. And guess what? Heidi is managing her cattle, and it's amazing. And I'm excited for you guys to hear about it. So welcome, Heidi. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm just going to give a little highlight because Heidi's superwoman. Now, we don't all have to be superwomen, but Heidi's superwoman. So she manages the cattle. She homeschools. She does all things. Heidi has turned the ranch into a business. And that is the most exciting thing that when Heidi and I talk, that's what's exciting to me, is that she is a no excuse kind of girl. So if you have a problem, Heidi will just take care of that for you. Or she'll hire somebody to do it, like Brock says.
So true.
So Heidi, can you tell us a little bit about your operation?
It's a very integrated operation and holistic. We farm and ranch and run a feedlot, and all three parts work really well together. We have different managers over each one. My husband kind of does the feedlot. My father-in-law kind of does the farm, but it takes a lot of communication, which we're not the best at, but we're really trying to get all three parts to move well together. Our calves wean into the feedlot, which is supplied by the farm. We bring in custom cattle because our feedlot is successful and our farm grows more feed than our calves can utilize. And we utilize some custom grazing, which is where our policies came in, to give us flexibility in dry times and peak grazing times. So that's a very short synopsis of what we do.
So tell us who owns the feedlot.
Well, we are all partners together.
So it's set up as a partnership.
Mm-hmm. We're an LLC actually, but yes, we all work together and we all own it.
Okay, so
Brock and I.
Go ahead.
Brock and I had the opportunity to start a custom grazing business kind of on the side, and Brock and I own that.
Okay, so Brock manages the feedlot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Heidi, you manage the cattle portion.
Mm-hmm.
Dad does the farming.
Yes.
And your mother-in-law does the books.
Yes.
Right. So I love it because everybody knows their position, but the communication, even though you say you're not best at it, I don't think anybody's good at communication. I mean, you ask Jess and Tiara and they'll tell you I suck at communication because I think everybody should be a mind reader. But that's a huge piece of it. And I know since we even started working together, you guys have really increased leaps and bounds in that area, because there was some miscommunication or no communication. And so can you just even enlighten us? So many people are going to say, how did you do that? How did you guys get to where you were and still remain a very close family and be able to work together?
By sheer tenacity, refusing to quit. I mean, because yes, the truth is, when you come back to a family operation, which we came back when and we bought an uncle out. So there was transitioning. We transitioned in, somebody transitioned out. And there's just a learning curve. And there may be people out there that can do it a little better, a little quicker than we can. It was definitely painful, very painful at times. And we stayed times we wanted to leave. But yes, I would say, and I don't know if we knew the actual day when we said, hey, we have titles, we have places, we know where we belong. It just kind of, we kept working at it and kept working at it. And then one day when somebody asks, I can say, here's our job titles. And so sheer tenacity. And if I don't think that I could give anybody a formula.
Mm-hmm. But did you guys go to ranching for profit?
Yes.
Okay. So did that help know, like, we should have job titles? We should all have what we're good at?
Absolutely, it did. I would say it maybe brought the difficulty right up to the front, because then, you know, you have somebody telling you this is how your business should look. This is the job that you should have. This is the respect that you should have. So now you know everything that you should have, and you realize you don't have it. So then you get frustrated. When you're frustrated, you tend not to interact well with the people that you're frustrated with.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it helps because it shows you where you're at, but then you have to work through all of that frustration and come out on a good place.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, I probably can't make that jump
Mm-hmm.
from the frustration to the good place.
So did your in-laws also go to ranching for profit, or was it just you and Brock?
My father-in-law did, yes.
Okay, so that's awesome because you were both there, you heard it, and then we all have to come home and decide what we're gonna do. And but you guys really took off because when I met you, you didn't have your own piece yet. You guys were still very intertwined with the LLC of mom and dad stuff. And everybody looked at the finances a little bit differently at that point. And then can you tell us how you guys went and just created your own and said, you know what, we're going to have some of our own stuff so we can run the finances and the cattle the way we want to? How that started, because I know some of it is family ground and some of that ground you purchased.
Yes. And it kind of just happened by accident. We knew that we wanted something, and we knew that we wanted to try to make some difference in different decisions when it came to finances and to the grazing and some things like that, just because different people have different ideas. And when you're young and coming up, so you've got a different generational perspective. And that was one of our struggles that we were very much struggling with. And then a piece of ground that we had been renting, the owner approached us and wanted to sell. It was not an optimum time for us to buy at all, but the opportunity was such that we couldn't really walk away from it. We really just had to throw everything on the table and say, we have to see if we can make this work.
And the
And
seller,
that was it.
but the seller, whom I love and I have never met, but I like this guy because he owner financed you guys.
Yes.
And he saw that, oh, guess what? Well, and his accountant, if I recall right, saw the potential. And I believe that when we talked, if I remember correctly, you were going to do a 20 or 25-year mortgage with him. And I said, well, why not stretch it to 30? Because it just gives cash flow, right? Did he do that? If I remember correctly, I thought he did.
He did. He decided to go with a 20-year balloon payment over a 30-year mortgage, so that at 20 years, he would have the option to make that decision whether to stay in it or to get out.
Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic because you guys, it gave you a little bit more of an opportunity because you didn't have to go to the bank in a non-opportune time. You didn't have to go to the bank wondering how it's all going to get done. But that has given you an opportunity to run your cattle the way you want, and you're doing rotational grazing, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how the rotational grazing has really created the income and some of the profits that you guys have now compared to how you were doing it before?
Yes, I don't even know if I can give a proper comparison between where we were at before to where our rotational grazing has taken us and is continuing to take us. Um, but between Ranch for Profit, which teaches a lot of the grazing principles, and then the Savory Institute, Holistic Management is the other one. And I utilize their grazing plan, um,
Okay.
and how they want to plan it out, which because it's planned on rest and not how many animals you have. And so utilizing that, and then I think for us, our other secret weapon that we were able to bring in was our custom grazing of yearlings. I can bring in a large amount, whatever amount I want. Every year I choose how many I need to reach my carrying capacity for that year. And they come in during the green period, during the grazing, when the grass is growing. And then when the grass is done growing, or at when I think the grass is done growing, the yearlings go away and we just maintain a herd of cows. So it has enabled us to flex every single year our grazing numbers.
So are you guys building your herd and then just filling the rest with the custom grazing piece with the yearlings?
We are not actually growing our cow herd.
Oh,
We're
okay.
we're maintaining it as is, and it's not our intent to fully get to that point. One, because of the flexibility, and number two, which actually was our other very big issue, was cash flow.
Mm-hmm. And the custom grazing has produced an enormous amount of cash flow without you having the cattle note.
Yes. So when we had the opportunity to buy the land, there was no way that we're going to be able to have a cow note at the same time. And where we were in our plan, we're trying to get away from the bank as much as we can, but we still have to have a line of credit. We couldn't have a land note, a cow note, and a large operating note to only receive cash once a year at the end of the year. We could not operate that way. We had to figure out, because we did go to the bank to get a line of credit, and we basically had nothing on our own. We weren't going to use our other businesses to back it up because it was only Brock and I. So we're standing here on two legs, that's it, and saying we need an operating line. Mm-hmm. So we needed to make that as small as possible. And to do that was that cash flow. So we picked the right person that could meet our terms to cash flow with the yearlings. So we went out and we said, this is what we need. We need half up front to help us start operating. And then when they leave, we'll take the other half, and that'll get us through the rest of the year. And then we'll have a small line of operating to carry us in between those two periods.
This is what I get asked all the time when I tell people to run yearlings or do some custom grazing. But Mary Jo, where do I find them? What is your answer to that?
I think all you have to do is start telling people and letting people know that you're willing to take in cattle. I had, so yes, Nebraska has been typically dry here in 2022, but thankfully, in our little pocket of the world, we have been extremely blessed with rain this year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people around us, and we don't have to go very far, and it starts to get dry. Mm-hmm. One of our neighbors, who also is in this little rain pocket, had an exceptional year of growing grass. He does not do anything with custom grazing, but he decided that this year, being as good as it was, that he had an opportunity to sell some of his grass. He put an ad on Facebook. He said within 10 minutes, he had 50 offers, and he chose. He talked to them, and he figured out which one was the right fit for him and went with it. Mm-hmm. Now, whether he'll continue doing it or not, I don't know, but he had no problem finding people.
So do you have a contract with that individual that you do custom grazing with?
We do.
Okay. Because I think that, I mean, I've talked to people that it's gone wrong. Like they've done custom grazing for people. I talked to a guy that he did custom grazing for somebody that he knew. There went Heidi. Oh, that's funny. Um, he did custom grazing for a guy that he knew for 30 years, and the guy's in prison because he can't pay, you know. So it there are there is some risk you take there, but I think it's a very small risk compared to the reward. It's just a matter of vetting that person and really making sure that they're gonna pay their bills.
Yes. And we went, the guy we have was recommended to us by somebody else that we knew. So I think it's completely, I mean, if it's going to be a large number of cattle, large dollar amount, and you were going into a contract with somebody, I see no problem why you don't ask for some references and say, hey, will your banker back you up? Do you have some other guys that you've done business with before that I could visit with? Just, why mess around if it's large numbers?
Okay, here's the other question that I have for you is when we talked last, you said we weren't doing full rotational grazing. We were kind of doing it and it wasn't working as well. So, a lot of people are kind of doing it. We're going to kind of try it versus not try it. And I remember you saying you do it or you don't do it. And so, can you give some suggestions or comments on that?
Yes. So I would say with looking back to how we started and then looking to some local guys and watching them start and asking questions, there might be a way to jump from continually grazing to really, really good rotational grazing. But I do think there's a learning period in there, even if you ask somebody to help mentor you. And I think the process is as you go from continuous overgrazing to intentional overgrazing, rotationally overgrazing, because your mind starts to shift and you're like, it's moving cows. That's what I need to do. I just need to open this gate and move cows. Well, that's step one, yes. But then you realize you've got to pull in the rest period behind it and make sure that your grass is recovering and coming back fully. And so stay with it and keep going. And most people, they start it, they realize it's really good. I need more cows, which is so true, but it's a balancing act of when you bring in more livestock balanced with your water, because that's the next thing that you'll realize. First, you're going to realize I don't have enough animals. The second is I don't have good enough water. So if you want to start rotationally grazing, boost all your water immediately. Whatever you have, it's not enough. So,
and then at some point you realize I don't have enough help. And then you have to hire, because I know you have, I love this piece, Heidi. I know you're laughing, but I love it because you hire people. Like last time I talked to you, you had somebody mowing your grass. And that is and somebody, helping tutor the kids a little bit. But that is a product of knowing that Heidi should not be on a mower because she needs to be moving cattle. Her expertise and where she excels and where the ranch makes money is Heidi planning where the next move is going to be, how the water is going to go in. And so how many employees do you guys have?
Well, we were up to, I had a good summer of finding people, and I was up to 5, and then I lost them all, and we're regrouping, and we've got 2 more back on. And I told my husband, I said, at this point, I'm not going to ever tell anybody that we're not hiring. So I am always hiring. I don't know when somebody will find a new opportunity. And that's the other thing that I'm coming to a realization too, because just because somebody leaves isn't a bad thing. It needs to be a fit between both people for so many reasons. There's so many things that come into a fit. Where's their family? If they have kids, are they married? Is their spouse able to have a good job? I mean, are the kids doing well in school? There's so many things. And so I think that the natural flow is employees need to come and go till you can find the right people. So I'm praying that I've got a couple right now that will hopefully find that this is a good fit for them. But if it's not, we'll keep looking, and the goal is to have somebody here that it works for them as much as it works for us. So
that is so funny. I've talked to a couple other successful business owners, and they're not farming and ranching. But I'm like, how are you finding help? And they said, we hire all the time. I'll hire people just to hire people, and I'll find something for them to do. If they're good, I'm not going to let them go. And
yep.
That is a very interesting concept, because we don't typically want to hire until somebody puts their 2 weeks in, or walks off, whatever. But why? And not to be scared to hire somebody to mow the lawn so that I can keep my sanity.
Yeah. What's the point in being successful if you're so stressed out? Like, yeah, mow my lawn, please.
Yeah.
I mean, I love mowing my lawn, but then I'm not doing something else. So.
Right. And you have the kids to homeschool.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit? Now, you've had your policies for, I didn't look before we got on, I want to say 4 years, Heidi.
So I did look up. So 2019 in July.
So that has been 19, 20, 21, 22. So 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be 4 in July. But... Yeah, it does seem longer. So when you started the policies, what was the goal?
So we had kept a little bit of a nest egg aside that we did not put into debt, even though we had debt, and a lot of debt, because once we paid it into debt, it was going to be gone. We couldn't get it back. There was no return on it. So we had kept it aside. When we got the opportunity to buy the ground, we had the nest egg to make the down payment. So that was going to be a one-time expense. Once we paid the down payment, then I'd have a business that would start generating cash. That was the hope anyway. So I had read your book. I had listened to some of your podcasts, and it sounded really good. It took one conversation with you to convince me fully. My husband probably not, but he just went along with what I wanted to do. And so my goal was to save money every year. This was a good way to do that, as well as protecting us and our business with life insurance policies with death benefit, to get that into place as well. And so I took the down payment and ran it through the policy first. Mm-hmm. Now it's not 100% in, 100% out.
Right.
But I could make it work still with the premium and then having the cash value to borrow against.
Mm-hmm. And I remember I was scared shitless. I'm like, this lady better know what she's doing, because they need this money for this down payment. And how is she going to pay this back? We don't even know if we're going to have the cash flow. But because I don't let everybody do that. But you had spreadsheets. Like, you came to me with spreadsheets, and we were looking at spreadsheets of ins and outs, and you knew your numbers, and you guys very much keep your books, and that makes a world of difference. So we knew we could pay that loan back because we were going to have the cash flow to do it, as well as pay any premiums going forward.
Yes. My cash flow, I put the premium in my cash flow every year that I am going to pay it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I had another question for you there. Oh, what have you used your cash value for besides the down payment?
The down payment was first. And So I opened the policy in July of 2019. In December, I borrowed the full amount of the cash value back out for the down payment. Then I had 2020's premium that I was able to pay in full. I wasn't able to pay it in full the day that it was due. I had to make the premium. And then I think 2 months later, 3 months later, I was able to do the rider amount, the rest of it. So 2020, I didn't borrow anything out of that policy, and I made an interest only payment on what I
On
had
the
borrowed
loan.
the previous year. Yeah. So then in 2021, I probably should have done this in 20. I'm still learning and figuring it out. But in 21, I went ahead and did a partial line of credit. Even though I have a line of credit at the bank, I went to my policy first and borrowed some. And I would say the only reason I've been a little slow on that is that even though I know my numbers and stuff, I've been afraid that I wouldn't treat it as a line of credit that needs to be paid off that year, and that I would think that I just had an extended line of credit. I still had everything at the bank, plus when I pulled out a policy, and I didn't want to go down that road.
Yep. So, but that's a
So,
mindset, right? It takes time, just like it takes time to understand rotational grazing. And geez, I should keep my books. It takes time to put the banker hat on and really understand that you have to pay yourself. Even though nobody's bugging you about it, you have to pay yourself.
yes.
Yeah. So that takes time. So the other thing that we have done with Heidi's policy is they have one child that has Down syndrome. And you guys are very much raising your family that they are going to take the other three kids. One of them is going to take care of him. He is not going to be put into a facility. There is not going to be are you guys taking any kind of government aid?
No, not on him.
I didn't think so. Okay. So we're going to take care of him. Now, when we do that, and I don't hardly ever talk about this at all, but when we have a disabled child, Down syndrome, or, oh my gosh, autism, anything like that. And now we're really lucky. Her son is very, very mild Down syndrome. So we are able to actually insure him. That is normally not the case. But we can put a rider on the policy. So what happens is Heidi has a policy on herself, and we put Brock on as a rider for term insurance. So when Heidi passes away, that death benefit can go buy life insurance on her husband at the time that he was when we issued the policy, which was about, let's say he's 37 at the time. So it doesn't matter if Heidi dies in 25 years, we can take that death benefit and buy life insurance on Brock as if he's 37. That death benefit then will go to whomever, a trust, or to one of the children, whomever is taking care of the disabled child, so that there is money there to do so and compensate those kids for doing that, because they may have a loss of income if they're having to take him to appointments and, care for him or whatever. So, and do you have a trust? If I'm correct, you have a trust set up for that, right?
We don't have a trust for Reagan yet. Brock and I have trusts.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
But I would say, if you would agree, it is a huge peace of mind knowing that the other kids are going to be able to have that money to do that for him.
Absolutely. There will be enough money there. They could buy a house and pay a healthcare worker to come in and stay with him, that they get to choose, and they can pay them whatever they need to pay them to get somebody that's that's good. So basically, there's no option off the table with that money there. We can absolutely do whatever needs to be done for him. He can live wherever and do something or do nothing, and we can surround him with the right people.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome. I love it. And I don't do it a lot because a lot of times I don't know meeting with somebody that we have a disabled child to begin with. Like Reagan's so little that why would that even come up in conversation? Um, normally if we have somebody that's disabled, they're a teen or early 20s, well, we're still living there. They're still living with mom and dad because of that. But when you're that little, I typically am not going to ask that question. So I've done this rider a couple of times and I think it's absolutely fantastic. So there you go, people. A good example of what you can use. But now Heidi, due to management of all of her cattle and her rotational grazing and her bookkeeping and the family coming together, well, now Heidi has a whole bunch of money again. And because she's making a profit. So now we're starting another policy for her. And it's just a matter of being an honest banker, right? Because we've paid some stuff off. And so Heidi can be like, oh, we paid all this stuff off. And so, yahoo, let's like go on vacation and fix up the house. But instead, she's being an honest banker and saying, well, I've paid that off. So I'm just going to redirect some of those funds, not all of them, but redirect some of those funds to a new policy.
Correct.
And then what are we going to do with that new policy? What's your plan?
Well, because I'm going to do the same thing that I did the first time. I had a chunk of money that I was going to buy ground with, so I started a policy. I have a chunk of money that I'm going to put a pipeline in. I'm going to start my policy first. Once again, it's a one-time expense. It's a large amount of money. I'm going to put it in the pipeline, but I'm going to put it through my policy first. Then I'm going to borrow it back out, which, by the way, one of the chunks of money I paid off that initial loan for the down payment of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, all I have borrowed is a line of credit. Now, I don't know if you need to have all your policies paid off before you start your next policy or not, but it makes me feel better that I have. So
it really, I tell you not to typically, but I tend to fall into your line of thinking too. Like I like to have the majority paid off of mine before I start a new one. However, if we are really wanting to create the wealth, I would say, hey, that was a down payment. Just pay it off over 25 years. Take the rest and put it in the policy up front so we've got more compounding for a longer period of time. It really sometimes just comes down to what's going to make you sleep better at night. And if you're sleeping better at night because you have a loan paid off, then so be it. But paying premium makes money. Paying loans back doesn't make us any money. So you could have paid that off over 5-10 years. At the end of the day, here's the other thing I look at is the amount of cash flow you have coming in now because you guys have your operation to a point where it's kind of dialed in. That loan would have been paid, it wouldn't have taken you 25 years anyway. You would have had it paid off sooner. So we just delayed it a couple of years versus delaying it 25 years. Now, if you would stay stagnant, okay, maybe we should, pay it off over 25 years. But you guys are growing so quickly due to the management side of it that it's not necessarily going to matter.
Yes, because we've grown on the same land base. We have not expanded that way. The ground that we bought, we were already renting it. We were already leasing it. So we did not expand anyway. We changed our management. Mm-hmm. And all of this increase has been due to management. Now, if we had had a super dry year this year, that of course would be different. Rainfall can definitely make a play in a grazing business for sure.
So the guy
But
that you were renting from, who you now bought from, were you able to do rotational grazing on that before you purchased it? Was he okay with that?
he absolutely was okay with that. Because that's the other thing. There's a lot of low ground. There's a lot of sub-irrigated ground that is really good for hay meadows, which was what he was doing. Because he was running a typical operation. When we came on board, we were honest with him up front and said that we don't feed hay to our cows. Our cows calve in May and June. We don't need to feed hay, and we would rather just graze the meadows, which once again is kind of a hard concept sometimes for people to accept. But he was open to it, and we did it. But taking into account that it was not our ground, we never wanted to do any extremes on him. We wanted to do it as good as we could, so that there was never a doubt that we were disabusing it, because you can come in and you can graze hard for a year because you need to, and then with the mentality that I'm going to graze differently next year to allow this grass to recover. What I did today is going to take a year for this grass to recover from. I accept that, and I'll deal with it. But to do that on somebody's leased ground, and if they choose that day to come visit you, it's probably going to be a hard conversation. So yes, we were rotationally grazing, but we didn't move fence lines. We didn't do a lot of cross fencing. We didn't do a lot of huge water upgrades. Because it has to be a balance. He was willing to do some of that investment, but it doesn't pay him back unless we were to pay a lot more rent. So when the day that we bought that ground, yes, we started tearing fences out. We started cross fencing. We started upgrading water, and then that's where the pipeline is going this year. The
Did you
entire
pay
piece of ground.
somebody? Did you hire somebody to tear the fences out?
No,
Heidi.
no, we still do a lot of this work ourselves. But if my sister ever listens to this, if she ever hears this, she got stuck without a job during COVID. So that was the summer of COVID. She needed a place to come, and I says, I will hire you. So she came, and we yes, I'll bring anybody in, and I don't care about your level of experience. We'll just figure it out as we go along.
But you're
So
not
yeah,
staying here for free and eating bonbons. You're gonna come here and you're gonna work and I'm gonna pay you.
yes, she also got to tear off a roof that summer, and we tore down a corral and rebuilt it as well. So
Does she
yes.
want to ever come back?
Well, she's in the military now, so I think she's happy where she's at, and we can just reminisce about what we
That's
did
like
that
it's
summer.
that's like I'm going to the military to escape my horrible parents. She joined the military so she could leave.
Well, it was a good program to get ready for the military. So
Yeah. So I just have one last question really. How many years did it take you when I interviewed Gabe? I think he said that it was going to take about 3 years. How many years did it take you to like kind of get everything figured out and see that it was working? Because Gabe said if you quit before year 3, you missed it. You got to stay in at least 3. Did you see that too?
when we went to Ranching for Profit, which was I should have looked that up, but that's been probably 15 years ago at least.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
it's a long
Uh,
time before I met you.
yes, it was. So we were trying to do some things before that. What I tell people, because Ranch for Profit is not free, it does takes a chunk of money and a chunk of time to go. We came back, and the first decision that we knew we were going to do something different due to what we had learned there. We made more money, enough money to pay for that, more than pay for what we went. Um, so the decisions along the way, the mindset that changes as you start to look at things differently and make your decisions differently. Um, the the return on that is immediate. Now, what you do with that money and what you keep going, and if you keep learning, because you can make that first change, like I said, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need more cows, or I need to plant a different crop, or you're excited about what happened. And then sometimes you jump in and you start making mistakes. And I don't know that you can do it without making those mistakes, but you have to realize that's part of your learning process. And don't, you fail once or twice or a dozen times, you stick with it, because there is, I don't know how to explain it. The grass is growing, the grass is strong, the grass is vigorous, our farm is strong. We don't need as many fertilizers. The fertility is there from what we're doing. So yeah, I would agree that you don't give up. There will be a lot of little gems along the way that are going to make you excited. And then once in a while, you're going to stumble, and don't let the stumbles dissuade you.
Well, it only took you 15 years. And I think that's awesome. I think that is super important that people hear that. So if you guys did not hear that, 15 years ago, they went to Ranching for Profit. Dad was there, and I met Heidi 3 years ago, and we were still having communication struggle. So it does not happen overnight. And can you maybe cut some of that time off? Maybe. But if you're dealing with people that are hard-headed, and it's just not always does that previous generation want to make that change. And so the biggest takeaway for me here is you guys just went and got your own stuff. You leased your own ground and said, you know what, we're doing it, but we're not waiting for them to decide what to do it. We're doing it to have our own money. And if this all can come together, fantastic. And I think, and what I've heard you say before, is it all came together when they saw what you guys were doing and that it was turning a profit and it was working. And oh, look, Heidi knows how to manage the rotation. Brock is good at this. It almost took them seeing that to go, okay, maybe they're not full of crap and they do know what they're talking about. Right?
Right. And then you have to back it up, because even for my husband to, when I said, here's my numbers, everything that I showed you, I showed him. And I said, I can do this. I can make these payments. I can make the land payment. I can do the insurance. I can do all this. And he just looks at me and he said, you're going to have to prove it. So he didn't say no. He didn't get in my way, but he just looked at me wide-eyed like, I think you're crazy, but I'm not going to get in your way. So sometimes that's a lot of pressure too, because you put yourself out there and you say, yeah, I can do all this. This will make a difference. Well, then you have to step up and actually do it.
Yeah, but you were learning it, and you were applying what you learned. And then you kept learning, and you kept asking, and you kept talking to people. Here's the biggest thing that I see. We're going to go to Ranching for Profit. Then we're going to complain that Ranching for Profit doesn't work. Or we're going to go to a school and say rotational grazing or regenerative doesn't work. But how many years did we apply it? Did we actually apply it correctly? Did we go back and ask people how to do it? It's like buying your life insurance policy. I didn't just give you a policy one time and say, okay, Heidi, you have a really nice day and you let me know when you need your new policy. No, it's a matter of when we have questions, we're constantly talking about that so that we can understand it, because it's not always just a clear-cut answer to, oh, this is why we're doing XYZ.
No. And it has to be a win-win relationship. And so if you're working with family, or you're going to go back to family, or you want to bring in family, if you win, it means that they lost. And if you really do like them and maybe perhaps love them, then them losing is you losing. And so for us, it probably took longer than it could have, but we weren't going to do it at all costs. So we needed to be profitable, because then the hard reality was we were going to lose the business without it. And then nobody would have anything. But we also didn't want to sever relationships and say, we have a profitable business, but we don't talk to you anymore. Well, that was not one of our goals. So,
And this is another thing that I love about you is that you are not, and I think that your generation is seeing this, but I know that you have been working with Callie Thorne and doing some John Maxwell leadership training and really understanding how our brain works, how to lead correctly, how to communicate with people correctly. It it is not just, oh, what are my numbers? How do I feed? How do I rotate? But it is also, how do I treat people? How do we communicate? How do I become a better leader and work on me so that projects to everybody else? And so many people, this is like, I feel like that piece is very new to the agriculture world because they've always thought that that's all foo-foo. Like, we don't need that stuff. And, but that, it's huge. It's absolutely huge to look at ourselves and say, where can we improve to also improve other things?
yes,
So has her training been amazing?
it has.
Good.
Yeah, I bought a hot tub. That's what her training.
Oh, Kelly, if you're listening, this is a great testimonial. I am okay. You're gonna have to explain how John Maxwell leadership leads to a hot tub. Write the story, Heidi.
If you do everything right and you're working hard and you're trying to make better decisions and your business is taking off, if you're waiting for other people to come alongside you and pat you on the back and say that you did a good job, give you a bonus, give you a pay raise, whatever it is, send you flowers, and it's not happening, and you're like sad and like, why doesn't, what's going on? Maybe you need to do it for yourself. So I rewarded myself for a hard summer of grazing with a hot tub. Felt good about it.
Nobody else is giving Heidi flowers and rewards. And if Brock is listening, he perhaps could have just done that and it would have been more cost effective. But because he has not, the hot tub is what got purchased.
So after a hard day of work, I can now go sit in hot tub.
And does everybody love the hot tub or just you?
Everybody. My kids think it's great. Yes. Yes. And my husband joined it. I don't know if he would give it a straight up say, yes, I love it, but he will sit in it. So there's that. He says the company is good. So
I love it. That is winning. Winning, Heidi.
And after
I can't
that,
wait to talk to Kelly.
after working with Callie for I think 6 months and having the success and having the people hired, then all of my people quit. They left. They went to do other opportunities, and then I had nobody. So everything that I had built, I was now on my own to handle, and I jumped out of Callie's class because I just was like, I don't need one more thing on my schedule telling me that I need to be here at this time to commit to it. And even though I would say maybe that was one of the more important things, like it was time to retract. So even though I've learned a lot and we've been super successful, the last couple of months we had to retract and like just like sink in, and we're like, come on now, we're coming back up out of this nightmare of labor shortage because the work did not go away.
Yeah. But another lesson.
It's
all lessons along the way. Because now you're not sitting in your hot tub, you're falling into it at night. But it's a lesson at the end of the day that we got to keep hiring. We got to, I mean, leadership is not something that just happens overnight. And I am constantly listening to John Maxwell stuff and figuring out leadership, and it just, you're always going to have those little lessons along the way, but that doesn't mean you can't jump back into her next training or whatever else happens. I see that there's so many of these type of trainings now, and there's so many people in agriculture talking about it, and it is your generation and younger that are talking about it, but it is so necessary because we have such a negative mindset And that is one thing that helps you guys as well, is you don't have a negative mindset. There's not an option to fail in Heidi's book. It is a how do we do it? Okay, Brock says you're going to have to show me. Okay, fine, I will. Because I got the plan, right? Like, don't tempt me because I will come up with a solution. And you're super creative that way. And I love it because then we can talk about all those things. But when you say, well, I can't do that. This won't work. Oh, that's not going to work. Then it's not. It's just that simple. It is just that simple because it's the same thing with Reagan. Even though he might be a Down syndrome, he doesn't have the option to not. I love watching it. I love watching you guys on Facebook because he does not have the option to not ride horse. He does not have the option to not do. He's doing it. He doesn't get the option.
Yes, and sometimes it's not an option.
Oh, I love it. All right, my dear. Is there any final comment or anything you would like to share with anybody? Or if people reach out to me for your number, would you be willing to give them time?
I would.
Okay.
As my time allows, I will do my best. I love to help people and encourage people along this route because I don't like to hear no to myself. I don't like to hear other people being told no either. So if you're a person who somebody's told you no and you're struggling with it, I mean, the person who told you no is probably not going to like me, but I'm going to tell you all of the ways that you absolutely can do what you want to do. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be a struggle. And you might have to just stand up for yourself once in a while and be your own cheerleader kind of deal. So yes, I would.
And if you're going to call Heidi, I will give you her number. You can message me, email us, whatever. I will give you her number. But please, if you call Heidi and take up her time, do what she tells you to do or don't call her. This happens to me all the time. Mary Jo, how can I do this? And then I tell you what to do and you don't do it. And then you're like, well, but I want to be like you. Well, you can't be like me because I did it. So do what she tells you to do and don't just use her time, please. Okay. With that, I am going to end it. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. If you have not left a review, please leave a review. If you have questions, comments, concerns, whatever, let me know. MaryJo@withoutthebank.com. I am happy to answer you. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.